Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wealthbox Workflows 101. And this is our lovely little webinar for today. And I guarantee you, if you try to say that fast, you will stumble on it. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I am the manager of implementation and strategies here at Simplicity Ops. And when it comes to really those processes, nothing screams it more than workflows. This to me is always kind of like that pinnacle. You've reached true CRM success when you have your workflows in place. And this is really what we're going to be talking about. So let's go through kind of like an agenda, set the stage to really, again, set expectations. We've got a lot we're going to be talking about. Hopefully, I don't talk too fast, but if I do, please just let me know in the chat. I'll reel myself back in and we'll again go a little bit slower. But we're really going to start off with what is a workflow to begin with? How can we benefit from using these? How do you get everyone in your office to really use it? We'll go through some examples in terms of high level, and then we'll spend some time in the CRM as well. So again, I'll give you a 20,000 feet up type of picture, and then really microscopic, we'll get in there in terms of really using that CRM. And then we're going to spend some time on what I call that whiteboarding concept. I won't make you watch me do that. It is painstakingly boring, so I will not do that to you. And again, I'll leave some time for questions at the end. But let's start off with that first bullet point at the top. What is the workflow? What really defines what a workflow means? And all a workflow really is a checklist. It is your process of processes. What do you do whenever you open a new account? You do X, Y, and Z, right? You have that list of order. You've got those, again, tasks, all that you need to get completed. That is a workflow. Where people can get tripped up is technically a workflow can be super basic, where it really could just be one or two steps only. That does not mean it's not a workflow. You could have a workflow where you're entering into the realm of 30 plus steps and you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is insane. That's still a workflow. Again, it's all of those processes, those checklists of what you need to get done that happen over and over and over again. Whenever it comes to a rule of thumb of like a template, and I know I'm going to sidetrack for a second here, not just for workflows, but in general, when it comes to activity or a task or events or notes or anything else, email templates, anytime you can think of like a template itself, if you find yourself doing it 3 times at least in a week, to me, that's justifiable as a template itself. Again, templates in their nature are designed to be repeatable. They're designed to help expedite, again, all of those things that you do, which brings me into this whole concept of benefits and how to get an adoption. It's kind of hand in hand here. So I call it the benefits and buy-in. Why on earth should we even spend the time now to create those workflows to use in the future? Well, here's your brilliant idea here. 1, it creates consistency. Think about your office right now. Is there a process that you just wish you had a workflow for, that it wasn't just, oh, let me build it randomly here and build it over here? Well, when you build out a workflow, you build it out once and you use it many, which brings me to that whole repeatable factor. You don't have to come in here and build it from scratch over and over and over again. You're building it once, you're using it a whole bunch of times throughout the whole office, and you're all benefiting it, and again, keeping that consistent. The next two kind of go hand in hand. It's that trackable process, and it builds the contact's history. When it comes to that whole trackable, think about a process that you're not the whole way through and through. Like you don't have to do every single step and task that's in there. If you may begin with it, you have that first step, but then it goes off to someone else, and then it goes off to someone else from there. And then it goes back to the other person, and then finally comes back to you. You still can figure out what's happening because, again, that process is going to take you through there. It's going to give you that ability to pop in really quickly and go, here's where we're at in this scenario. And again, while you're doing that, you're building that context history. Really, when it comes to the CRM, the C of CRM is your contacts. Everything you're doing for it should be building that context history. So when you have a account opening, when you have a Benny change, when you have a move money or an RMD process or a Roth conversion, or I can, again, just keep going and going and going, all of that directly impacts that particular contact. Now, here's where I want us to stress. I did not put the word client when it comes to that contact history. My reason being is because you have workflows that are going to be for prospects. You could have internal workflows that affect everyone in your office, more of like your business record. So again, you're still building everything that's taking up your time when it comes to, again, those workflows. The best thing I can ultimately stress with this is if you build it once and you reuse it and you're not having to, again, reinvent it every single time, the amount of time you are saving is going to be insane. So you're increasing that efficiency in your day-to-day processes. Again, I can safely say time is the one thing I wish I had more of. And if I, again, have those different workflows in place, I know that's going to save me the time in the long run. The best thing with workflows is that you're establishing a clear ownership of who is responsible for those steps. You have to define who is ultimately going to complete that. I don't know about you guys, but if you just use like tasks or task templates and you assign it over to like a team, sometimes you run into this situation where it's like well, am I doing it? Are you doing it? Who's doing it? No one's doing it. You don't want to run into that with a normal task. You more so don't want to run into that when it comes to workflows. So that's why when you create that template and you assign out, hey, it's going to be this role, or it's going to be this user or this team, you again can have it where it's strictly applying that responsibility. We'll get into that whole assignee ownership a little bit later, but just know you are going to want to put a specific person when it comes to it. And again, the ultimate buy-in, you've reduced the room of errors. Again, if you have a process that's built out, you've worked together to help establish, hey, every time we have this, we do this, you're going ahead and mapping out that whole, again, scenario. So you're not running into that whole, oopsies, I forgot about this, which, I mean, it's still always possible, but you're not going to have it as often. If you don't have a workflow in place right now and you're living off of just one-off tasks, the possibility of dropping different balls is more likely than if you just drafted out your actual process through and through. So let's take a look at some examples. And then again, like I said, we'll have some fun when we get into the CRM. So as I said earlier, I did not pick clients when it comes to, again, building that history. This is a perfect example. This is our onboarding series. So whenever we hear about, hey, we have got a prospect, what do we do to get them to become a client? This is our legit process. We start with an introductory call, which brings it into a discovery meeting, which brings it into a financial planning meeting, and then takes us into an implementation meeting, finally an onboarding, and then what we call our new client welcome meeting. So again, it starts off with prospects, finding out if they're a good fit, moving them forward, getting that paperwork signed, onboarding all the details in the CRM, and again, having that welcome aboard, you're here with us, your family type of case. This is, again, a 6-series workflow that we have. I have seen this kind of like an accordion. I've seen people have more than these 6 workflows. I've seen people have less. This to me is kind of that Cinderella fit. It is perfect in terms of really getting to know that prospect and bringing them all the way to that client experience. Speaking of client experience, though, that brings us to kind of a second set of workflows. This is what we consider that client management. So again, these are all very common workflows that we've seen over and over again. Do not feel obligated to have every single thing on this list. I always just like to give different examples so that way you can think about what you may be missing if you have some workflows, but you're still just, again, not having everything included. This is going to include things like account closures and transfers, more of that personal detail like address or email changes. Again, thinking about accounts with age of majority or Benny changes. Then you get into more kind of unique things like charitable donations or QCDs, check deposits and move money, things I hope you don't have to use very often, client termination and or client death or divorce. None of those are fun workflows. But again, they're designed to be there to make sure you're not forgetting any step along the way. Specifically, ones that you do not do every single day, that's where I find the workflows to be even more valuable. Because if you haven't done a particular scenario, like, I hate to say this, but like client debt, if you haven't done that in 6 months, you probably don't remember everything that goes into it. That's the point of this workflow. It's going to act as that second brain when your first one's not working for you. Then again, you're also going to have those more common ones, review meetings. This is one I feel like every single office I've ever worked for has had one like this. They might have named it differently, but the scenario is still the same. rollover and Roth conversions, exciting things like retirement, new accounts for existing. So again, you can have quite a few workflow templates, but again, think about what makes up your day-to-day function. If you don't do some of these as often, I'd still have them for when that occasion arises. There may be some that you touch multiple times in a day. That is common. Looking at you account transfer, you want to make sure that those are, again, set in place so you don't have to come in here and modify it every single day. So again, you have that onboarding, you have that client management. There's one more set of workflows that I like to give a little shout out to, and it's more that internal dialogue, the practice management. This is going to be things like new hires. If you happen to have the reverse, terminated employees, again, conversations we don't want to have, but we have to have that process in place. The quarterly maintenance workflows, review meetings, client events, again, anything internal. All right, before I get to questions, let me hop into Wealthbox. This, I think, is where most people are going to come into questions. So if you do have questions, like I said, pop that into that chat. For today, again, we're going to strictly be talking about really the inner workings of workflows. So I really won't be talking about how to do like a mass emailing or anything like that. If you do have those questions, I would recommend, I'm going to shamelessly plug joining our RIA operating community. It's completely free. You can post questions in there. That's a good place to get some questions and answers. But again, for today, we're really going to be talking about those inner workings of a workflow, what makes them up, how do you really build a template, all of that good stuff that, again, I know you're really looking for. So when it comes to those different workflows, what's the first step? Well, click on workflows. Shocker, you didn't see that one coming, right? Workflows on the left is going to take you to anything that you have active by default. You're going to want to click on Manage Templates if you're going to want to edit templates. Here's where I'm going to tell you to pay attention. If you come over here, you've got Published. Well, plot twist. If you click on this, you may have more options in here. Yours may look different. Do not feel like yours has to be identical. This is the ones that we have as different examples. You may only have 2, you may have 5, you may have more. Again, this is really just those different libraries that you have. Wealthbox does have some that are available completely free to use. I'm going to say this now, though, when it comes to any template, whether it's coming from Wealthbox, ourselves, again, a different kind of integration out there, the templates that are provided are only going to get you so far. I am never in a firm belief that they are going to work for you right out of the gate. It's going to get you to the 1-yard line. You're still going to want to come in here and assign really who is responsible, those missing steps that are unique to you, those possible wrinkles in the situation known as outcomes. You're still going to want to modify them. So again, when you come in here, just keep that in mind. There may be more options. If you are in the process of building one from scratch and you decided to start in the late afternoon and your brain went completely mush, and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, you're going to want to leave it in a draft setting. I've learned from personal experience, if you put it into publish and it's not ready, someone is bound to use it. And then they have a half assembled workflow out there and you're cringing inside. So if, again, you are not finished with a workflow, put it into draft. And I'll show you where that is in just a second. So again, when you have it published, these are all the ones that are ready to roll for you. Again, yours can look completely different. If you have absolutely none in here, don't panic. We've all started from that. That's where you're going to want to come in here and add a template. For today's setting, though, I'm going to actually edit one so you could see, again, all of those little different pieces that go into an actual workflow. So I'm just going to pick on this first one here. Again, an intro call. You may call yours like an initial. You may call it an intro call, an introductory call. Call 1, first meeting. Again, there's a million and one names you can name it. Just name it that in the workflow. So I'm just going to call it number 1, introductory call. Right after that, you're going to get this whole sequential or non-sequential question for something that goes in order. Okay, I have to do this first before I can go and do this. Sequential is a yes answer on that one. I'll take you, that was in English, I will take you to the quarterly Wealthbox maintenance workflow. The mouthful for me. I'll show you that one. That's a non-sequential. You'll see there's a slight difference with it. Again, yes on that one. Then you also get a question of what is this workflow for? If you have past experience of kind of using workflows with other CRMs, this is something that's a little bit unique. Most of the time, I'm going to say it's going to relate to a contact. In fact, I want to safely say 9 out of 10 times it'll be a contact. And that's really just because, again, that is going to build that contact history. If you are putting on an event, then it's possible you're going to want to connect it to a project. If it's more of like your introductory and you want to loop it to that opportunity, you could do an opportunity as well. Again, my safe bet is contact here. Description, freeform text box. Be cautious here. Just because you have a freeform text box does not mean this is the time to put in a novel. This is, again, going to appear at the top of your workflow. So if you add in the War and Peace of descriptions, it's going to be the War and Peace of descriptions at the top. It's a bit much. What I like to put in here is kind of like what I consider like post-it note details. What is something that's going to be useful for me throughout the entire workflow? Put that into the description. Below that, share this template with my workspaces. This is really more so specific if you have other Wealthbox accounts. This isn't necessarily going to say like, hey, I need to have someone else in my database use it. So I like to have it still as yes, just in case you ever want to share this with another user out there, not necessarily, again, another user in your particular team or your office setting. Now let's get to, again, what I consider the ultimate goal of this webinar, which is really talking about what makes up a workflow. So I'm going to click on this very, very first one. The first concept in here is known as steps. Steps is just a fancy way to say, what do you need to do? What's that task that you have to get completed? What do you have to do next? What do you do first, second, third, fourth? You get where I'm going with it. That's all it is. Now, in the step name itself, again, I do not recommend adding in the whole world of details. If you, in fact, click on that edit, you'll have another description where you could add the whole world of details. And that's where I tend to do that. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But again, step name, what is it that you need to do? Think of this as like your verb, your call to action. What is it that you're trying to complete? Below that is where you're going to get into this whole concept of due dates. So this is really aspect number 2 of a workflow. When is this supposed to be completed? You've got a few choices in here. If I pick the default workflow start, it's basically just saying that if I pick today as the start date and I have this as 0 days, that very first step is going to be due, shocker here, today. If I come in here and say 2 days, it's going to be 2 days from today, a week from today, a week from today. You also have a choice of a milestone. So if you happen to have a little bit different of a scenario here, where the call has already been scheduled, but you have a prep beforehand, you've got meeting day items, and then you have follow-up items, you could put that kind of pivoting date as a milestone. Now, if you have a scenario where there's kind of multiple target dates, there's multiple dates that the workflow kind of revolves around, you can have it be the workflow start date and have a step further in the process align with that milestone. And in fact, I do just so you can see it. Again, don't overcomplicate this. If you're ever sitting here going, I have no idea what to put, so safe bet, put the workflow start date. Everything you do after that will be based off that previous step completion. That's a safe enough bet. It'll get you there. It'll have an assignment. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Below that, you're going to get into that whole concept of assignee. So if you remember 3 or 4 slides back, I had said this whole concept of taking ownership and responsibility. This is what I'm talking about here. You get a host of choices here on a normal occasion. So you can have a contact owner or workflow starter. If, again, you have that whole assigned to field filled out on a contact record, that's what the contact owner is talking about. Workflow starter is the person who actually launched the workflow. So if I took this workflow, went ahead, made it live, I'm the workflow starter. If my coworker did, they're the workflow starter. When it's something like this, or it could be something where it's like, I'm going to take these 5 from this prospecting list, you're going to take those 4, you're going to take those 3. The good news is you could use this workflow, and if you launch it, it's assigned to you. They launch it, they assign to them. We each have our own lane to stick in. You also get user, and you can also have teams, and then you can also enter the realm of roles. So let's take that one by one. User is exactly how it sounds. If you are going to assign it to user Catherine Beltran, guess what? It's going to go to me as an actual task to get completed. If you put it in as a team, here's where I'm always cautious. If you assign it to like the operations team, and there are 5 people in that operations team, guess what? Every single one of those members just got this workflow step saying, hey, do this. Where I see that being problematic, again, is there's 5 people, they're all going to sit there and question, hey, is this one over here doing it? Is this one over here doing it? Is this one over here doing it? Are 3 of us doing it at the same time? I'm never a huge fan of that. Weirdly, though, I am a fan of teams when it's used with only one assignee in the team. What in the world did I just mean by that? Think about a team for like an intern. If you had an intern every single summer, but that intern changes every single summer, you could still have just one team of intern, have that step assigned here. You just go change out the team members every single year. That's an easy way to help it so you don't have to come in here, bulk update it from a user every single time because there is no way to bulk update it. The other thing I also like to keep in mind, so something we do internally, we have an actual just Team Catherine. So that way, when it's assigned, we can come in here, it's assigned to Team Catherine instead of user. Again, why? Well, if I ever get super lucky and win the lottery and I say, peace, I love you, Kate, but I'm going to go live on the coast of beaches and just enjoy my life, instead of her having to come in here and update every single user task steps that are assigned to me, she just can actually, again, go change the team name, change out the user, and you're good. That's the beauty of using teams over user, and I will pick that every single time. The last choice. This one's a little tricky to show only because roles are customizable. So roles is the last choice you have when it comes to a workflow assignment. What in the heck are roles? Roles are a fancy way to say, hey, there are multiple advisors in my firm. This advisor has all of these clients. This advisor has all of those clients. They'll do all of theirs. They'll do over theirs. Again, they're staying in their lane. But we only want one workflow. So that way we're consistent and we stay that way. Well, if you pick like a role and you have it as like advisor and you pick that assignment of role advisor here, it's going to read that contact record that you attach for that workflow and assign it appropriately. So if I have client John Smith over here, I'm the advisor. If we pick role advisor, attach that workflow to John Smith, it's going to assign it to me. It's incredibly useful whenever you have multiple advisors or associate advisors or junior advisors or secondary advisors. If you have multiple kind of like admins that are assigned based on different contacts, you can get really, really crafty when it comes to, again, that role assignment. But again, where it gets tricky, I'm going to kind of sidestep for a second. I'm going to come on over to my 3 dots in the top right. Just kidding. Actually, I'm going to open another tab really fast. Don't be me. Normally I have multiple. There we go. And my mouse didn't want to freak out either. So we're going to come on over to the 3 dots in the top right, come to settings, and come on over to customizations. Under the right-hand side, like as far as you can, right column, contact roles is where this exists. You can put whatever you want here when it comes to the name. So even though I did advisor, associate advisor, and CSA, again, you could put main advisor, associate advisor, and admin. You could put advisor, secondary advisor, operations. Again, whatever your normal terminology is, you apply it here and just pick the different options that are in there. That will then become available over here. So I just did a very long-winded way to say, hey, make sure it's assigned to someone. Otherwise, this workflow is not going to work. Coming on down, you have 2 kind of optional pieces here. These are ones that I will not die on a hill if they do not get filled out. Step priority to me is more valuable when it is live. So if you have something that needs to be done ASAP, even though it says like, hey, do today, but I want to do it like in the next 10 minutes, that's where you could put that priority in there. You're going to have very similar to when you use tasks, the low, medium, and high, same concept. When it comes to category, this is, again, another customizable field. I'm going to shell shock you here for a second. Just keep in mind, mine is a demo database. You, again, could have a different list. This is where you're going to come in here and put anything that you, again, work with every single day. So very similar to the list I showed you as an example, you've got those account transfers, the client divorces, retirement, you've got move money. Again, what makes up your day? That's where this category comes in. Where a category can be valuable is when it comes to really, again, filtering on a contact record. It also can be helpful when it comes to reporting. Again, where I will not die on this sleep is because, again, you do have this linked to your contact record. You can always find it quickly. But again, this could help when it comes to color scheming with those different steps in here. So again, one little tip there. Back to that lovely description that I talked about earlier. Remember that step description is really where you have that free form space to add details for that step. So instead of putting a novel and a half in here, put the novel and a half down here. Do I encourage having a novel? No, but again, this is where you can add in the details that are going to help, especially if this is a process that is a new employee's task. You can come in here, it'll help guide them. So again, add in all of that information. It's listing out one by one, listing out the exact type. If you use a category with a custom field, what that category is. Again, it's trying to handhold as much as possible without it bogging down the main page of that workflow. You also can attach a file in here. Now, do I recommend adding every single document that you ever come across for that client in a workflow? Absolutely not. That's going to be very time consuming. And I'd still recommend using more of a compliant space out there like OneDrive or SharePoint. But if you happen to have something like an agenda and you use that same form every single time, this might be a good place to put that. Or again, maybe you have like a presentation that you use every single time. It doesn't really change. You could put that in here as well. So again, anything that's going to add value, put that in here. If it's just taking up time, stop and ask yourself, is it worth the, is the juice worth the squeeze? If you say yes, put it in there. If you say no, cut it, move forward. If you make any changes, make sure you hit save. Otherwise, everything you just did was completely for nothing. So if you hit save step, you're good to go. Something I have not talked about yet. So we have talked about steps. We have talked about this concept of a due date. We've talked about the concept of an assigned to function, who was responsible. We haven't talked about the wrinkles known as outcomes. Do you come across a step where you sit there and go, well, it's not always linear, Catherine. I might have to go this way, and then it'll go this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. And it's kind of like a weird cartoon in a way. The good news, that's where outcomes come into play. Outcomes are designed to give you different routes in a workflow to give you the ability to work at any time on any of those steps. So if it's possible, not likely in this case, but if it's possible that you've already scheduled an intro call, it does not make sense to go from here to here when you've already done it. That's where you can come in here and create an outcome. And then that'll allow you to go to a different opportunity here. So I can go to a specific step. I could restart the step. I could just completely get out of the workflow right then and there. Or I can go, oh my gosh, they rescheduled for the 18th time. We have to restart it completely, restart the workflow. You can have multiple outcomes. So do not feel like you have to have only one way. That would be the absolute defeating the purpose of an outcome. So if you look further down here, I've got this whole confirmation step. Well, let's again just kind of think about that retrospectively here. If I have scheduled the introductory call or I sent the link to schedule the introductory call, I want to come to a landing step like this that's actually asking me, have they legit scheduled it yet? And again, that answer has two different ways. Yes, they have, in which case I'm going to go ahead and bypass following up on it, or no, they have not, and I need to follow up on it. Again, I've got two possible outcomes from here. And I'm just answering, yes, they have, or no, they have not. That's all an outcome is it's giving you the ability to control where you need to go in this workflow. So that's really the last piece that makes up a workflow. You've got your steps, you've got your assigned to, you've got really that due date, and then you've got those outcomes. You're just going to wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again, or however that phrase, I think we all argue about that different way, but again, it's going to be that repeatable process that I told you about earlier that applies in both building as well as in using it. Now, I'm going to exit out of this one because I do want to show you a sequential or a non-sequential one, and that's going to be that quarterly Wealthbox maintenance one. So give me 1 second and I'll get there really quick. There we go. I'm going to just again click to that edit, and then I'll show you what it looks like when you start it too. So again, this one has a no. And if I come on down here, you're going to see I don't have any of those numbers next to it. I don't have an ability to move it about. If I were to switch this to sequential, that's where you're going to see, again, those numbers. So here's my little tip, only because I can get really, really, really OCD on certain things. If I built out a workflow and I've gone through this list and it's originally a non-sequential workflow, but it's killing me that this is step 12 when I do it all the way up here, put it quickly into a sequential, move those steps about the cabin, And then you can always come back and switch it to no, and it saves it in that setting. I know that's really weird, and that's getting again into the extremes, but if you're like me, that's just going to be a useful tip for you to know. You're going to again get those same options though that we had from a sequential order. So you're still going to have a step name. You're going to still have those different assignee options. You're going to have the priority and category and the description as well. So nothing is extremely different between a sequential and non-sequential workflow. Really, you just have to ask yourself, is there a distinct order I have to generally follow? If it's more of a literal checklist, hey, I can get this done while someone else is working on over here and they could do it out here, then I would just put it as a non-sequential like this one. Now let's go ahead and launch this just so you can see what it looks like when it's actually in its live phase. And I'd like to touch on one more little tip when it comes to launching workflows. So when it's like an introductory call, you're going to link it to, oops, wrong button. Let's come back over View Workflows and start a workflow. When you come in here, it's going to first ask you for that template, who it's related to, label, all of that good stuff. If I were to just try to click the start workflow, you're going to get those big old red arrows saying, hey, you got to do your job first before I can do mine. I'm going to do the quarterly Wealthbox one so you can see what that looks like. Plus, I think this is a really good workflow to help highlight what you should actually have clean in your database. The next thing is going to be that related to. Again, this particular workflow does not apply to one single client, does not apply to a prospect. It applies in general to your firm. So if you have not already, I would recommend adding your own company into your Wealthbox CRM so you can connect any notes, any workflows, any tasks, meetings, whatever else under the sun you could physically think of, all links back up to your business record. I'm going to go ahead and put today's date. I can adjust the time if I'd like. If I want to put this where it's a date in the future, just keep in mind it's going to show up as a scheduled workflow rather than an active workflow. Again, that's getting really into the nuances. I'm going to go ahead and just launch it really quick so you can see what this looks like. So we're going to let Wealthbox think about it. And then here's all of those lovely steps that we just saw on the other page. So once again, if I can click on in here, I could click on the name, or let me come back here, click that little caret. It's going to expand that workflow or that tab. Reverse. It's going to expand that step. There we go. Again, it has all of that description, what we need to get done, who it's assigned to. I can add in a comment. So again, if this is something that's going to help maybe the next person in the steps, you can add in those extra details. To me, it is never a bad thing to add in comments here. I'd rather you tell me again the life story of everything that's happening than for me to have to hunt you down to ask questions to specify specific things. So again, it'll have things like what we need to actually do. When I am finished with this particular step, you have, again, two more options here. You get a lot of options if you couldn't tell. The first one is a complete step and notify. If this particular step is something that I want another coworker to be aware of, that's the whole notify concept. If I click on here, I could click that search workflow or search coworkers or groups, complete that step. Again, that email notification gets sent off. If that's not the case, I just need to complete it, complete step. Completing it's going to go ahead and just literally check it off. You're going to see a complete step and incomplete steps down here. If it is a sequential order, and I'm going to close out of this just so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to click view. It's going to look a little different. So over here, we have add prospect information, a little, very, very little difference in terms of, again, description. I still have comments. I'm going to have the same two options when it comes to actions, but this time, oh, sorry, I'm getting real crafty with my mouse here. There we go. It's like, there it is. You're not going to have that whole like complete and incomplete. Remember, with a sequential order, it's going to either go to the next step or it's going to go to the step that you are getting forced to ask it to go to. So you're not going to have the whole incomplete or complete. It's just going to ask you where is it heading next if there is an outcome. Again, you can come on in here, keep powering through it, complete that step, and you're going to still have all of those options. I want to just get to the outcome though, so you can see what that looks like. And here we are. So if you remember, and I know that was all of 10 minutes ago, but I've said a lot. If you come to this step, there are two options. Has this been scheduled or no, it has not? Here's the two outcomes if you forgot. When you come on over here and you hit actions, complete step, this time it's going to ask you, where are you going? If you are going to say something like, yes, it is scheduled, it's going to skip over a step just like this. So I didn't need to follow up on it. It would be really weird if they scheduled and then I sent out an email saying, hey, just a reminder, you need to schedule. Your client or your process is going to be super confused. Again, skip over the steps you don't need to do. Then you keep powering forward and all the way through. When you look on a contact record, I'm going to give us whiplash for a second. That's going to show up again, kind of like two places. Workflows on the right-hand side is going to show you all of the active workflows you have open for this person. If you look in the actual kind of feed, the history, you're going to see everything that you have done, completed, any, again, outcomes that are included. If there was comments, you'd see the comments. You're going to see it all. Again, click back into it. You're back to where we were just at. So that's, again, why I would always recommend having the prospects in here, the contacts in here, but also the businesses that those workflows can relate to. You don't want to force a connection and build the wrong history. Let me come back to workflows, though. I did very, very briefly bring up something, and I do like to clarify this. When it comes to this whole workflows, you have active, completed, and scheduled, and the filtering. If you're picking a date in the future, that is where you're going to have this whole scheduled option. If it's for today, again, if the next step is here, if you've been working through it, it's an active workflow. Completed, exactly how it sounds. Don't overthink that one. If you have made it all the way through the process, it's going to show up like this one, 20 out of 20, 19 out of 19, 17 out of 17. You get where I'm going with this. You will have all of those options in here. Most of the time, you are going to live in this active because this is, again, your assignments, what you need to get done. All right, let me pause. Let me see some questions before I take you to one last place to really wrap it all up. And let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. All right. I will show you how to join the RIA community. I'm struggling saying that one, so I apologize. I'll show you where you can join that at the end of this webinar. So I'll get back to you in just a bit. Got it. So we've got a question here. So is Wealthbox the same as Redtail? Wondering if the workflows work the same and if we can find the templates that are out there. They work similarly. I'm going to say that one. When it comes to really the due dates, that's the biggest difference between the two platforms. They both have steps. How those steps are defined are different. Steps with Wealthbox is literally just what you need to get done. Redtail makes it steps is where you're at, and then they have tasks as like a subsection. So again, they're similar, but not. I'd say they're siblings, not twins. That's the best way to describe it. But they still have outcomes. They still save to the contact record. That's still the same goal at the end of the day. Right. Let's see here. We utilize a queue system with the assigner of workflows to assistants in our office. If we have multiple steps meant for an assistant to do and is to be assigned to an assistant, can you mass change the individual assigned to multiple steps in the workflow? For example, if steps 2, 4, and 6 need to be done by an assistant, can the assigner mass assign John Doe user to steps 2, 4, 6 in one shot? Short answer, no. When you're building out that template, that's where you can assign out. I would use roles in your case. Actually, that might still get a little tricky. So roles and or teams, depending on what the case is. Keep in mind, let me come back here. Roles are over here. And again, it makes it context specific. So if I were to pull open Margaret Investor and I could pick out, hey, the advisor is this, the associate advisor is this, the CSA is that, that's how it again will read when it comes to that workflow. There's also teams over here. So workspace and then teams towards the bottom. Again, you can customize this depending on what plan you're on. It depends on how many roles and how many teams you have. If you're on the pro, that was in English again. If you're on the pro, it's 3 and 3. If you're on the, I want to say the upgraded, I want to say it's 5 roles. Don't quote me on that. But you have a little bit more options. But again, teams is where you can assign multiple users or even just one like this, where it's saying, hey, here's an option and have it as that workflow. But short answer, I have yet to find a way to bulk update all of those tasks in a template to another user. I'll show you where tasks show up in the long run. It's again, kind of going full circle, but just when it comes to templates, you may have to take some time if someone ever leaves, if you used user. All right, let me see in here. Is there a place we can access additional template examples to reference when making our own workflows? Fantastic question. So again, we're going to give you a couple of our whiteboarding documents. Basically, it's a rough draft version of what's here. This is where I'm also going to shamelessly plug before ever building out a workflow within any CRM. I would actually recommend starting outside of it. I know that sounds wild, especially coming from me that's like, do everything in the CRM. My reason is because if your brain's like mine, where it's just going to scatter everything you do, you know what you have to do, but you forget about it. It's a heck of a lot easier editing a Word document than it is to edit a actual CRM workflow. Not impossible, but again, it's just easier to just kind of like throw paint and see what sticks type of scenario. You list out everything in the actual document, you edit it, you get other people involved, you find out you're missing stuff. Once you have that kind of rough draft version in a good spot, then can build it in here. It's 10 times easier. But if you don't have, again, that Wealthbox library, if you reach out to, I want to say it's the success team, they should be able to actually get those imported for you as well. But I know throughout like a couple different groups in our RA, I'm struggling saying that one today, RIA operating community, you can also ask around there too if there's any templates anyone's willing to share with you. We have our own library that we share with our clients that will be quite extensive that we'll go through. But again, it just depends, but I would definitely hit up other users like yourself. It's always a good space, or again, look to see if it's worth buying it from somewhere or becoming a client of somewhere. Yeah, lengthy answer there. All right, let's see here. Okay, we've got, bear with me, it's a lengthy. So we have been focusing on households for a couple of years, but this makes it harder to use workflows since only individual contacts have the contact information. The challenge is that workflows and active steps only appear when viewing the contact, person or household, but if a workflow step or task is completed for a person, contact, then those won't be visible when viewing the spouse or other household contact. Do you have any recommendations for our office to stay away from adding workflow tasks on the household and instead on individual contacts? Just want to be sure we know where. So this is my own personal 2 cents. You can take this as you will. You can also get, just say, hey, Catherine, go kick rocks. I generally like to put everything on the main head of household. My reason being is because that individual contact will have everything in its history. I have one place to go and look. If you are running into a scenario where you're sitting there going, well, Catherine, the spouse is also a client, we meet with them too. Okay, well, then if you are meeting with that client as well, you can have a workflow for them as well for anything that's specific. I don't like putting it necessarily on the household because, again, then you have to remember to go and look in 3 different places potentially. So I generally will always stress just put it on the head of household. There could be exceptions to that rule, but safe bet, one contact, the main contact, you have everything there. It's a safer bet. And again, you're not wasting time looking in 7 different locations. So again, that's my little TED Talk speech. Okay, kind of a similar question for Michelle. Is there templates somewhere? So again, there is some from Wealthbox. There's a couple out there for different integrations. So if you use Bento Engine, that's another one. Again, we have our own library that we have for our clients that we modify. Again, there's quite a few out there. I would always, again, put like a little asterisk. I find even though there are templates, you're still going to have to adopt or adapt them to fit your needs. So you may find it's just worth it to, I know it's taking time, take the time now, build out what your process is, and then you have it where it's uniquely yours. I know that's kind of a pipe dream sometimes, but this is one where I would kind of encourage, block off a time for everyone, kind of like a team meeting that you would, to encourage maybe more involvement, throw in some food into the mix. I guarantee you'll get people included, knock out what you want in there, and then really have one person be the workflow building master. So that's always my tip. Make it a fun experience if you can. All right. Does Wealthbox only do step-by-step, or can it be designed like Red Tail where multiple items are being done at the same time via tasks? So this is one thing that is uniquely different between those two. Short answer, it is basically one step at a time, unless you're putting it as a non-sequential workflow. Then all of them are open at the same time. You can't have it where it's like step 1 has 5 tasks, step 2 has 3 tasks, step 3 has 1 task. Not the same in that case. That is where workflows are vastly different between the 2 CRMs. All right, let's see here. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to come back, wrap up one more tip, and then I'll see if there's any kind of lingering questions before I give you guys back your day. So we've gone through how to really access the template section, what really makes those up, how you actually use a template in your actual Wealthbox, like where to launch it. There's one more spot that I'd actually encourage you to get really comfortable with. Shockingly, it's your tasks. Why? Well, if you haven't noticed, there's also an option for workflow steps or task and workflow steps. This is, to me, where I live, eat, sleep, breathe. At the end of the day, this is going to sound really terrible. While there are multiple outstanding tasks for all of us in our company to do, I really only care about what I need to get done. I know that sounds super selfish, but that's truly what I need. What is taking my time? What can I do first? What can I do next? This is where I live. So in the tasks, it can be the default for the task only. You could do just workflow steps. I like to do both because, again, it's giving me everything that's on my plate for me to do. I'm going to specifically list it to just ourselves in that case. But again, you do have those different options. This is where I'm going to say you're really controlling what's taking up the space, the calendar spacing, everything included in your day. Live here. This is kind of like a tip that I give all of our clients. You can have multiple tabs of your Wealthbox CRM open. If you hadn't noticed, I use that setting as a full separate tab. This is one tab I'd encourage having open all day, refreshing it throughout it so you can see what's been completed, what's been newly assigned to you, what again has already been outstanding. This is really where you're going to take control of everything that you need to get done. So that's the last little piece, nuance, whatever you want to kind of consider with this that comes with workflows. Weirdly enough, I live in tasks to manage my workflows. So that's the last little bit. Let me make sure I get all of those questions here. One thing I did have, wrong direction. One thing I did have that I wanted to give everyone, kind of like what's next, where can I reach out to? So as I said earlier, here's that join our community. So I believe I had Gail ask me that earlier, finally making it full circle for you, my dear. Here we are. So if you go www.school.com/RIA-OS, made sure I went nice and slow on that one. That's going to, again, give us, oops, if I can go back to it, that's going to come in here and give us that different option we have. And again, this is our free community. So anyone can join this one, whether you are an advisor, an admin, if you are your own company for an integration, we've got a host of different people in there. And I find it a very, very productive space to get that help, ask how others use the systems. And again, we give that input. Coming again, another full circle, that whole resource document. So if you use that little QR code, so if you use your phone really fast or take a screenshot and then grab it later, you can actually text our number. You'll get a quick little confirmation saying, great, got it, and we'll send it your way. That's where that whole whiteboarding document is going to come into play. That again is available for you. So I'm going to leave it on this page to give everyone that time, but I'm going to go and, like I said, double check to make sure I'm not missing any questions before I end our workflow. All right. I think I have actually kind of two very similar questions, slightly different answer, or at least way to answer. Is there a way to automate? And is there a way to automate workflows like when I create an opportunity or task, it triggers a workflow? At the moment, no. But why I'm making a face is because it's not necessarily in Wealthbox right now. There is an exception to that rule. If you use a calendar system, specifically, if you use G reminders, how that all works, and I can't believe I'm shamelessly plugging this in. They're going to be so happy with me. If you schedule an appointment over on the G reminder side, take even like an introductory call or an annual review. They go through it like a normal booking, like you would with your doctor. Hey, I picked Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Here's my name, my phone number, my email. That contact gets the actual confirmation, but on the background on your side, it adds it to the calendar and it could launch the workflow. That is the one exception I've seen to the rule. I do know automations are on like the roadmap. I just haven't heard a date on when that's actually coming to fruition. I have been beg, bartering, and pleading because trust me, if I can save clicks, I would 100% love to. But that's the only exception to the rule that I know of right now. But good question. Oh, this one's a fun one. What recommendations do you have on waiting on client tasks? So I'm going to give an example that I'm sure is very similar. You send paperwork waiting for signature. I'm under no illusion that we have some clients who are rock stars. We send it 2 minutes later, we get it back, and you're like, heck yeah. Then we have our stragglers that take weeks and weeks and follow-ups upon follow-ups. If you can push forward to the next step and it's something like prepare for it, what I'd recommend, weirdly enough, is to basically take that step out of the workflow for just that person and throw it as a task for yourself to keep following up on it. If it is something that would prevent the next step from moving forward, just keep restarting that follow-up until you finally hear from them. You are going to literally just keep track. I would add comments though. Hey, made an attempt to reach out to them. Today's date, and actually you don't have to put today's date. Here's what I said, enter. Try again 2 days later. Hey, I made attempt again. Here's what it is. You just want to, again, keep that paper trail. But if it's something, like I said, that can be technically taken out, take it out, throw it as a task for yourself to keep following up on, proceed forward with the workflow. That one is a tricky one though. Okay, I answered that one. Ooh, I do love this one here. Okay, this is a tip from Sean. I'm going to pass it on. I'm glad you brought this up. You can bookmark the page for tasks with task and workflow steps selected. For example, our workspace would be, and then it has a link in here, just replace the link in itself. So I'm going to come back. So I'm going to give everyone whiplash. I lied. I'm moving off this page for a second. If you come on over, and you know what, let me take this one for a second. You see in here, I've got my own little hyperlink, settings, teams. I'm going to come to a contact. You're going to see that link is going to change. This is a tip in general. If you're ever referencing another page in the CRM, you can either bookmark it, or if it's part of like a workflow, hey, add it to here. Get that hyperlink and put it in that description. So that way you always have that link available. Every single page that you're basically on has its own unique link to it. So I'm glad you brought that up. That can be valuable for notes, could be valuable for tasks, could be valuable for workflows, yourself for everyday best practice of having multiple tabs open. Use it to your advantage. Thank you for bringing that up, Sean. I appreciate that. Ooh, question from Alana here. Just want to confirm you can assign an entire workflow to one Wealthbox user, correct? Yes, you can. You can have a whole workflow where it's just one person's responsibility. Totally normal, actually. You can also have a workflow for it goes to one person, a totally different person, back to that same person, back to the other person. It's whatever your process is, but yes, that is entirely possible. All right. Ooh, that is not correct, Gail. What I'd recommend, it looks like Gail's running into a link problem. If this is not working for you guys, just do us a huge favor. Just email it to here instead. Just reach out to info@simplicityApp saying, hey, the QR code wasn't working for me. I would love to get that follow-up from the Wealthbox webinar. We can send it to you that way as well. All right. Couple more here as we get close to the hour. How do you recommend documenting items to be addressed for the next meeting that is not yet scheduled? Okay, this one's a very, very, very full question. If you have the information now and you're trying to keep track of that data, this is where you're going to have as a follow-up, kind of like the add meeting notes and add follow-up tasks. So what I'd even just recommend, if I'm going to pull more of like an annual review. You just met with them. You may have made 17 different recommendations. They've had 17 pushbacks to it. Again, you're keeping track of everything you've done. Still put that in the notes. The notes to me are the most compliant aspect of any CRM. It's tracking what you've done. It's literally going to cover your butt. But when it comes to hey, the next meeting, we need to talk about this. I actually just throw in a task for myself saying, hey, here's the follow-up items when the next meeting is scheduled. You have that in here. There is, again, a couple different ways you can approach this even more. Let me close out of here. If there is, again, kind of like a note that you have, you can always pin that note so it stays at the top. You can put it in where it's like a reminder to discuss next meeting, and you have all of that detail here. One that's a little bit more hidden, and if you're already using it, it won't be an option, or I wouldn't recommend it as an option, I should say. Under additional info, there is an important information field all the way at the bottom. you could put in here, hey, next meeting agenda items and what we include. This to me is a little bit more hidden, but that's kind of the good and bad to it. The good, it stays in here. I don't have to really worry about messing with this one. I just edit what's here. The bad, again, it's hidden. So if you need it to be front and center, I'd go with a note and pin it. If it's just more of a recurring item until we're legit ready, additional info. All right. Ooh, okay. What is the best way to link in documents via Ignite or Dropbox? So coming back, actually, it's kind of come full struggling now. Full circle to what we talked about with Sean. If you have links, so I'm going to actually let me come to the templates really fast. Workflows, manage templates. I'm just gonna pick on one really fast. And I'm actually just going to pick on, again, a description really quick here. So in here, you've got this little insert link. If it's always referencing like, hey, create a contact folder here, and it's more of like the general folder before you actually go in, I'd actually just drop that link in here. Same can be said if it's Dropbox, Ignite, SharePoint, OneDrive, whatever you call it there, because I know it's the same thing. ShareFile, I'm blanking on anything else, box.com. Any of those, if you want it in the workflow itself, just use that little link, put in a little title. That link will still be something that you can click from the workflow, but it keeps it all nice and tidy. All right. Do a couple more here. And then, like I said, I will call it quits because I've talked my ears off or your ears off and my own, all of that good stuff. So last one here, Wealthbox says household roles for head, spouse, etc. Sometimes the head of the house isn't the best contact. Should we instead add a tag, say communications primary? So regardless of their household role, this tag is how we determine which contact to assign workflows, tasks, along with who to contact first. Kind of a loaded question. Usually when I think of the head of household, I do think of that as the main contact. If this is a scenario you can relate to where it's like, I'm always going to put the male as the head of household, even though the wife may talk more, she has more money to her, she's the one who actually schedules, then yes, I would go with your route. I would put in a tag that flat out says like primary communication contact or primary contact for communications, just something along that line. So that way, should you ever want to bulk send out an email, you could pull that tag, you send it off, you're all good. That could be extremely useful when it comes to that whole scheduling of annual reviews, because again, if you use something like GReminders, Calendly, OneHub, Acuity, anything else out there that's that same concept, you get a link. You can use an email template, drop that link in there, you pull your tag group, you bulk send, or let me highlight here. There we go. We bulk send an email. You have that option in here. It takes you like what, a good 45 seconds. It could be very useful. Again, to me, I always put the head of household as the main contact, but again, I understand everyone does it a little differently. So yes, a tag would probably be your best bet there. Yep, same concept. All right, Karen, I think this will be probably the last question here. Can someone else bulk send our marketing firm? So technically, anyone that's a user in your Wealthbox can actually send out emails. They just have to set up their settings. If they don't take the time to link up their Google or their Outlook, then you'll be denied that. In fact, let me come back here, give you whiplash. If you don't have that set up, this doesn't even exist on this drop-down list. I have mine connected, so that way when I click in here, I can send it out. So if you want a specific user on your team to be, that's like their whole, well, I won't say their whole job, that is one of their responsibilities. They just need to connect their information, have it in here. If we're thinking more so bigger picture wise, you could look into marketing integrations where it's a little bit more automated. I'd recommend just doing a quick little search on Wealthbox's integration site to see if there's one that really fits for you. And or if you're limited for any reason, whether you're associated with like a BD or anything like that, I would definitely look into it, just see if there's anything that could fit that niche for you a little bit better. I know there's different marketing tools out there, like FMG Suites is the big one I've always heard. Levitate's kind of a newer one that I do personally like. Lead Center AI is another one. Snappy Kraken's been around for quite a bit at this point. Precise FP can help with forms. So not necessarily like marketing, but form filling. That could be very useful. So again, just kind of think about those different marketing. It could be something that's worth your time. All right, we have done it, my friends. We have talked quite a bit. Hopefully you found this webinar to be useful for you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join me. Again, if you want to join our community, just hop onto that link right there. If you need those, or I should say, if you want those workflows, whiteboarding, either email us if that QR code doesn't work for you. But again, thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.